Welcome to API Q2 and IMS QMS Awareness e-learning training. In this e-learning, we will go over the major requirements of the American Petroleum Institute or API Q2 Edition 2 standard, and help you understand each clause requirements. We will also identify the relevant Ghaith IMS procedures and forms to satisfy API spec. Q2 clause requirement. API Specification Q2 is a specification for quality management system requirements for service supply organizations for the petroleum and natural gas industries, establishes the quality system requirements necessary for service supply organizations to consistently and reliably provide services that meet the customer, legal, and other applicable requirements. Here are the terms and definitions that will be used mainly as we go through the standard. Service-related product, SRP, are the materials, equipment, and software used in the execution of a service. These are nothing but the Ghaith equipment that we use to deliver our service. Critical success factor is the element of service that is essential to achieve goals or stated objectives. Example of these are the preventive maintenance and inspection and testing. NDT inspection. Jam graphs, torque as per requirement. Client evaluation, Ghaith or client format. Pressure test in subassembly. Word shall in API Q2 standard. Means mandatory requirement and no exclusion allowed. Note, to avoid any obsolete documents during any audit, don't show any Ghaith procedure from your own file or from your desktop. Always use documents uploaded in QPulse. API Q2 Clause 4.1.2 Quality Policy states that Ghaith established QHSE policy signed by our Managing Director and is posted in our facility. The policy talks about Ghaith commitment to conduct all operations in a manner that will protect the environment, communities and the integrity of the company's human, physical, and financial resources in compliance with statutory, regulatory, client and industry requirements. This policy also shows our continuous effort to seek for continual improvement in quality, health, safety and environmental performance, taking into account responsible care, process vulnerabilities, public, customer and employee inputs, operational knowledge and technology, and best business practices to exceed customer expectations. API Q2 Clause 4.1.3 Objectives. Every year Ghaith and all its departments set its QHSE objectives. Example of QHSE objectives are shown herewith. Item number 1. Company certification. Retain ISO 9001 to 2015, ISO 14001 to 2015 and ISO 45001 to 2018 certification. KPI to achieve is zero major nonconformance. Retain API spec. Q2 certification for TRS product line. KPI to achieve is zero major nonconformance. Item number 2. Achieve 90% individual performance from managers and supervisors on a monthly basis based on the following criteria. Minimum 2 stop card per month. Monthly QHSE meeting attendance. Annual management review meeting. High profile rig visit. These are just few items in the QHSE objectives and the complete list are maintained by QHSE and communicated to all employees for conformance. Monthly monitoring and review shall be carried out to ensure conformance. API Q2 Clause 4.2 Management responsibility. Top management shall ensure the availability of resources essential to establish, implement, maintain, and improve the quality management system, QMS. Management shall provide evidence of its commitment to the development and implementation of the QMS and continually improving its effectiveness. Organization structure. HR department has organizational chart updated as and when required. Responsibility and authority. HR department heads shall ensure that job description issued and signed by all employees mentioning minimum competency for the position. Personnel competence and training and awareness. To satisfy this requirement, Training matrix need to be developed, competency assessment shall be carried out, and performance appraisal shall be completed annually. APIQ2 Clause. Personnel competence. The organization's personnel whose responsibilities fall within the scope of the quality management system shall be competent. Competency shall be achieved by education, training, skills, or experience. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure addressing personnel competence. Competence assurance program procedure is established. To ensure implementation and conformance to the standard, competency assessment by qualified competency assessor shall be performed for personnel who are directly performing the service such as rig crews and workshop mechanics. APIQ2 Clause. Training and awareness. The organization shall provide for QMS training and for job training of the organization's personnel who effect execution of service or provision of SRP. To ensure conformance to this clause, Ghaith have HR and training procedures, develop yearly training matrix and training plan. APIQ2 Clause. Control of documents. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure for the identification, distribution and control of documents required by the QMS and this specification, including required documents of an origin external to the organization. The procedure shall identify responsibilities for approval and reapproval and the controls needed to ensure that documents, including relevant revisions, translations, and update. To comply to this requirement, Ghaith establish L201 documents and data management procedure. Example herewith of control document is the Power Unit Checklist with document control number of AL420605 Revision 1. Whenever the content of the document changes, the revision number of the documents increase and document is reissued for use and implementation. All personnel need to have access to QPulse to ensure that all IMS documents used are up to date. Note that to avoid any obsolete documents during any audit and implementation, don't show any Ghaith procedure from your own file or from your desktop. Always use documents uploaded in QPulse. APIQ2 Clause. Control of records. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure to define the controls and responsibilities needed for the identification, collection, alteration, storage, protection, retrieval, retention time and disposition of records. Once all documents are filled and completed, this becomes a record. Procedure L202 Legal Requirements and Control of Records details the retentions requirement per document record type as shown. Example of records are: job file records uploaded in shared drive, documents and equipment history in QPulse. APIQ2 Clause. Contract review. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure for the review of requirements related to the execution of services or provision of SRPs. This is a very important and critical step. In order to determine and review contract requirements, Ghaith establish L4219.05 Contract Review Checklist. The review are to be performed by top management, all department heads, sales and marketing where scope of work is applicable. Example of review as shown for ADNOC offshore contract carried out on October 1, 2019. Records of the results of the review, including resulting actions, shall be maintained. Note that where the customer provides no documented statement of the requirements, the customer requirements shall be confirmed by the organization and records maintained. Once contract is awarded, the company needs to plan in order to ensure proper service execution. APIQ2 Clause. Planning. The organization shall identify and plan the processes and documents needed for service and SRP realization. Ghaith establishes the following procedure to ensure planning is performed accordingly. L4219.05 Contract Review Checklist. Service Quality Plan and Process Risk Assessment. L217 QHSE Risk Management and Contingency Planning. L218 Design and Development. L204 Management of Change. All jobs shall be designed as per API Q2 clause design and development. This means that for every release of mobilization list or equipment list, a design and development plan shall also be released and completed. To comply with this requirement, Ghaith establishes Procedure L218 Design and Development Procedure and Form L4218.01 Design of Service and SRP. The design of service and SRP document as shown shall be initiated and completed along with the mobilization list or equipment list. The next slides will provide the stages of service design and development. API clause. Design and development inputs. Inputs relating to design of the service shall be determined and records maintained. These inputs shall include: A. Customer specified requirements. B. Legal requirements, and C. Other applicable requirements, including 1. Requirements provided from an external source. 2. SRP, including its functional and technical requirements. 3. Environmental and operational conditions. 4. Results from risk assessments, and 5. Historical performance and other information derived from previous similar service designs. The example of these service design plan inputs developed and released for one job is shown herewith. API Q2 clause. Design and development outputs. The outputs of design and development shall be documented to allow verification against the design and development input requirements. Design and development outputs shall: A. Meet the input requirements for design and development. B. Provide information for purchasing of any required SRP. C. Provide controls for the execution of the service, including allowable variations in the service execution parameters. D. Include or reference acceptance criteria for the completion of the service. E. Identify critical SRPs, and F. Specify the characteristics of the SRP that are essential for execution of service. The example of these service design plan outputs developed and released for one job is shown herewith. API Q2 clause. Design and development verification. Verification of the design of the service shall be performed in accordance with planned arrangements to ensure that the design and development outputs have met the design and development input requirements. Records of the results of the verification shall be maintained. The example of these service design verification developed and released for one job is shown herewith. API Q2 clause. Validation of service-related product. A final design and development review and approval shall be conducted and documented. Competent individuals other than the person or persons who develop the design shall review and approve the final design and development outputs. Records of the results of the final review, including the closure of any necessary actions, and approval shall be maintained. Example of validation of service-related product as written on design of service and SRPR. Cat2 Maintenance and Function Test Checklist. Cat3 NDT Inspection. Cat3 Lifting Gear NDT Inspection. Signed Mobilization Checklist and QC Inspection Checklist. Design and development changes, including changes to design documents, shall require the same controls as the original design and development. Very important clause of API Q2 is preventive maintenance, inspection, and test program product. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure for the PMITP. The procedure shall address inspection, maintenance, redress, repair, makeup, testing and acceptance criteria for SRP. As a minimum, the PMITP shall include A. Actions which address corrective maintenance. B. Actions which address preventive or predictive maintenance. C. Reports that document usage history, repairs or redress, modifications, remanufacturing, inspection, and test activities that allow direct verification for reuse of product. D. List of critical spare parts requirements by the customer and/or technical requirements considering those recommended by the original equipment manufacturer. E. Controls that ensure SRP integrity to the organization's defined performance requirements and design acceptance criteria are maintained for SRP and constituent components, and F. Frequency or condition that requires maintenance, inspection and/or testing. Records of PMITP shall be maintained. Defined performance requirements that cannot be met shall undergo the management of change process. Ghaith established. L206 Process, Service and Product Realization and Controls Procedure and Specific Preventive Maintenance, Inspection, and Test Program and PMIT Matrix for all facilities per product line. Example of Specific Preventive Maintenance, Inspection, and Test Program for TRS is a L201 General Maintenance and Inspection Procedure. Example of Equipment General, Function Test Checklist is as shown. Power Unit Checklist. Operations Manager, Operations Team, QA, QC shall ensure that this process is properly performed, and records maintained and uploaded in relevant job folder in the shared drive and QPulse database. All relevant maintenance checklist for non-SRP equipment such as compressor, pressure washer, overhead crane, forklift, vehicles shall be completed as per this clause. API Spec Q2. Identification and traceability. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure for identification and traceability of SRP. The procedure shall include identification controls at all stages of delivery, installation, repair, and redress as required by the organization and the customer. The procedure shall include requirements for maintenance or replacement of identification and traceability marks. Ghaith established procedure L205 identification, status and traceability to conform to this required. The tagging system in place are: Red tag stands for unfit for use, non-conforming. Yellow tag stands for equipment in storage, work in progress, under maintenance. Green tag stands for past inspection, ready for use, ready to go. All equipment shall have serial number either hard stamp or engrave. SRP shall be identified. Critical SRP shall be identified and traceable to the preventative maintenance, inspection, and test program records and the original manufacturer. After the job is completed, as a company it is important for us to know if the customer is satisfied with our job and whether all parameters and requirements have been complied. API Spec Q2 Clause Service Performance Validation and Clause Customer Satisfaction. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure to validate the execution of the service performance to confirm that requirements were achieved. This shall be carried out at appropriate stages during the execution of the service in accordance with design requirements and the service quality plan. Evidence of conformity with established acceptance criteria, including KPIs that are part of service execution, shall be maintained. The procedure to satisfy this requirement is L206 Process, Service and Product Realization and Controls Procedure. Example of service performance validation and customer satisfaction are: signed service ticket, post-job customer feedback form, jam graph meeting required torque, and pressure test graph as applicable. All relevant job documents also needs to be completed and submitted to base for review and record. API Clause. preservation of service-related product. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure describing the methods used to preserve the SRP during internal processing through execution of service. As applicable, preservation shall include identification and traceability, transportation, handling, packaging, storage, and protection. Preservation shall also apply to the constituent parts of the SRP. In order to detect deterioration, the condition of the SRP or constituent parts in stock shall be assessed at intervals specified in the procedure. To comply with this requirement, Ghaith developed the procedure L207 Control of Property and Inventory. To detect the deterioration, the procedure states that annual stock assessment for fixed assets shall be conducted. This should include assessment of the condition of the SRP such as in good condition, with fault, etc. Stores inventory count shall be conducted on quarterly basis. This should include assessment of the condition of the SRP such as in good condition, usable, not usable, etc. API Spec Clause. Control of testing, measuring, monitoring and detection equipment. Ghaith maintains procedure L208 measuring equipment to satisfy this clause. Work instructions and specific forms are developed for jam load cell and torque gauge calibration. All precision measuring instruments need to be calibrated with proper identification and status of calibration need to be tracked. All tools need to be kept in a safe storage area to prevent any damage that may affect its integrity. If any of the precision measuring instruments are damaged, due for calibration, it shall be red tagged, removed from service until appropriate correction and recalibration is completed. Herewith shows the example of calibration register where calibration status are tracked for all precision measuring instruments. API Q2 Clause. Purchasing. To understand completely the purchasing process in Ghaith, please go through L214 Purchasing and Contractor Management Procedure. Ghaith has three categories of vendors such as high risk, critical supplier; low risk, non-critical supplier; no risk, non-relevant supplier. For vendor initial assessment, L4214.01 supplier questionnaire need to be completed by vendor. Critical suppliers shall be audited by Ghaith QHSE before they can be registered in approved suppliers list and start transaction. When generating material request and purchase order, it is important to define the purchasing information. Refer to L4214.04 Purchasing Information Reference Sheet for examples of purchasing information that needs to be provided on PO. Prior communication to the vendor to ensure requirements are understood and correct items will be provided. Example of purchasing information to be provided in PO for purchase of sling are: manufacture to standard, EN 13889. Provide load test certificate and certificate of conformity. Complete type and dimension of the sling. Item identification such as manufacturer's name or trademark, size or load rating, traceability number, grade. When purchased items received, critical items need to be inspected using L4214.05 Incoming Material Inspection Check Sheet by either QC inspector or personnel who have knowledge on the item received. Suppliers shall be reassessed at a given intervals. High risk, critical supplier shall be reassessed after 2 years using vendor reassessment form and QHSE audit. Low risk, non-critical supplier shall be reassessed after 3 years. No risk, non-relevant supplier reassessment is not required. API Q2 Clause. Internal audit. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure to define responsibilities for planning, conducting, and documenting internal audits. Audits shall verify that the QMS is effectively implemented, maintained, and conforms to the requirements of this specification. The planning of internal audits shall take into consideration the results of previous audits, criticality of the process being audited, and applicable changes affecting the QMS. The organization shall identify the audit criteria, scope, frequency and methods to ensure that all processes of the QMS for the organization claiming conformity to the requirements of this specification are audited at least every 12 months. To comply to this requirement, Ghaith developed the procedure L203 audits and inspections. When performing internal audit, outsourced activities that impact the quality of services or SRP performed at the organization's facility or worksite, shall be included as part of the internal audit of the organization. Example of this is the NDT inspection company that performs the load test. MPI. Visual inspection of equipments and lifting gears and accessories. They shall be audited as part of internal audit. Use the L4203.15 third-party NDT internal audit checklist and report to document the internal audit for NDT company. API Q2 clause. Corrective action. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure to correct nonconformities and to take corrective actions, both internally and with suppliers, to eliminate the causes of nonconformities in order to minimize the likelihood of their recurrence. Incidents, nonconformances shall be investigated through procedure. L210 incident reporting, corrective action, and continual improvement. All internal and external audit and observation findings shall be addressed using the L4210.01 Corrective Action Report or CAR report document. Any customer complaint or non-productive time incidents shall be investigated using L4209.02 Incident and C report document. All actions shall be logged and monitored for closure. Once all actions are closed, this shall be revisited for effectiveness review at agreed time. 10 samples incidents shall be verified to check if the action put in place is effective or not, or needs adjustment. API Q2 clause. Management review. The organization's QMS shall be reviewed at least every 12 months by the organization's management to evaluate the QMS's continuing suitability, adequacy and effectiveness. This review shall include assessing opportunities for improvement and the need for changes to the QMS, including the quality policy, key performance indicator, critical success factor and quality objectives. The agenda of the meeting or input requirements shall include, but not be limited to, status and effectiveness of actions resulting from previous management reviews, results of audits, changes that could affect the QMS, including legal and other applicable requirements, analysis of customer satisfaction, including customer feedback, feedback from relevant interested parties, process effectiveness, results of risk assessment, status of corrective actions, analysis of supplier performance, review and analysis of failures in service and/or SRPs and recommendations for improvement. Top management shall review and approve the output of management reviews by signing the minutes of the meeting. Management reviews shall be documented and communicated to the organization. Records of these reviews shall be maintained. Ghaith established L212 communication, management review and meetings procedure and use L212 communication, management review and meetings to report the result of management review and ensure compliance to this requirement. API clause. Management of change. The organization shall maintain a documented procedure for the MOC process, to ensure that the integrity of the QMS is maintained when changes to the QMS occur. For the MOC, the organization shall identify the potential risks associated with the change and any required approvals prior to the introduction of such changes. The organization shall maintain records of MOC activities. In order to comply with this requirement, Ghaith established the procedure L204 Management of Change. To document the management of change, use the L4204.01 MOC form. The organization shall use the MOC process for any of the following that may negatively impact the execution of a service. Changes or proposed changes in the organizational structure. Changes in key or essential personnel. Changes in critical suppliers. Changes to the QMS procedures, including temporary changes and improvements resulting from corrective actions. Changes to original equipment manufacturer's specifications, applications and/or software for SRP. Changes in approved design including those that were originally agreed upon by the customer. Changes including legal, industry and other applicable requirements. Deviations from applicable procedures or requirements on a temporary basis to address a specific situation, and changes in the work environment. The organization shall notify relevant personnel, including the customer, of the change in residual or new risk due to changes that have either been initiated by the organization or requested by the customer.